Hi, this is Wishop, and I thought I would do a little Monday tarot and oracle reading. I am going to use the Ghosts and Spirits Tarot by Lisa Hunt. I haven't used this one in a while, and so I have the little white book handy because it does follow a basic Rider-Waite scheme, meaning like strength is 8, justice is 11, that kind of thing. But further, all of the cards are illustrated with characters who have ghost stories behind them. And the ghost stories are very carefully selected. I really think it's well done. And so I wanted to be able to make sure that I remembered all the ghost stories that go with the cards because they add an extra layer to the reading. So I want to do kind of a basic monthly reading. And there is a topic I sort of have in mind that's more of a general topic, but I don't know if it's going to come up. So if it comes up in the cards, I will definitely talk about it. Um, it's a little awkward because it's the topic of death, and it's an area that I have studied, especially with regards to afterlife traditions and persistence of the soul after death and reincarnation. And I've studied that from the standpoint of many, many different cultural traditions and sacred traditions, those with texts and those that were orally communicated to the extent we know them around the world and through many different times. So that is an area of strong interest for me. Um, and that is one reason why I do talk about the ancestors, because that connection to our previous, to our predecessors, and also in the way it highlights what the future may hold for us, not just in this life, but in future ones, I find very interesting. And one thing that a friend was telling me the other day, like, it's a little bit of a relief to think you don't have to get everything right in one go. And you know what? You don't. You're here to learn, and there is too much in this complex world to learn in just one trip. And so there are so many places to see, so many different experiences to have, so many people to be, to love, to share with, that you probably, being the adventurous, bold soul you are, which is why you're here in the first place, want to do many, many things and have a great deal of curiosity for lots of different things. So I just am throwing that out there in a very general way. If you would like to hear more about afterlife traditions and what various people and cultures have said about what happens after death and then what happens in between lives, so to speak, I'm happy always to talk about that. But this is a regular old weekly tarot reading. And I am using the Ghost and Spirits Tarot because it is kind of that time of year, and it is fun to bring it out. And as I said, this is a very well done tarot deck where the stories, even though they are all ghost stories, relate very much to the things we go through in life, which is ideally, another reason why I care so much about the ancestors, because they've all been human beings and lived through the kinds of problems that we experience. And so it's all about trying to have a better human experience, if that makes sense. So, okay, here we go to our center card. We're going to do this old-fashioned. I knew it. I knew you were going to come up. Okay, look, it's the death card. I've been pulling the death card for the last couple hours, which is why I thought I was being guided to talk about death. So I have to laugh because I just had a feeling it was going to show up, and I really didn't plan it. But I thought, look, if you want me to talk about death, I'm happy to, but show up. So here is this death card with a classic kind of Grim Reaper. But look at this character holding this lantern, holding this light like the hermit. And look at these little creatures. I don't know if these will sort of focus. Can you see these little creatures there, and these skulls and these sort of etheric shapes and these faces in the trees and the bats behind and the clouds above? It's sort of the idea that we can think of death as a very scary, very lonely thing. But death is, sort of going out to the recycling bin. It's not the end. It's just a new beginning. And it is happening amidst a great deal of life. Death is always happening in the middle of a lot of life. So to think of it as this one gloomy, scary terminal point, it really takes away something from the idea that love and divinity is eternal and everlasting. If you think about death as, well, that's a final point. There's a reason why death is 13 in the major arcana. It's not the last card in the major arcana, far from it. And in fact, we end the major arcana with cards like Judgment and the World, which represent a rebirth, a resolution, a learning of all the lessons that came before, and then a stepping forward into yet another life where you are born as the fool, as the babe all over again, and get to learn a new set of lessons, experience a new life. So let me see what Lisa Hunt has to say about this death card, just to be sure. Let's see. So it's the Grim Reaper. Perhaps the most famous symbol of death is the Grim Reaper, a portentous figure that surfaced into cultural consciousness around the time of the Black Plague. With its omnipresent scythe and insidious cloak, death lacked identity, further adding to its sinister appearance. But the specter of death can help us become aware of how tenuous and sacred life is. Death holds a scythe, symbolizing linear time, and an orb symbolizing sacred time. The setting sun indicates that the end is drawing near. And then she says in the divinatory meaning, all things must pass or change, but death is not the end, but represents the transference of energy from one form to another. It also opens up pathways to fresh beginnings. Another thing I want to say is you may be familiar with the Most Holy Death or Santa Muerte. She is a figure of veneration. And in fact, in Europe, there were female Grim Reaper figures, so that death was considered a dark mother who brought you back home and then prepared you for your next birth. There is a reason why these very strong goddess figures are so often associated with the womb and the tomb. As I've said before, that old saying from a mother, I brought you into this world, I can take you out of it. That is the feeling from these very powerful goddess figures, that there is a loving embrace and a care as each person, as each soul, which is also a part of the larger divine soul, is a divine child and would not be neglected and uncared for. And a little bit, even though we have this scythe here, which is sort of classic, like the cutting away and the harvest, and this is the harvest time of year, there's a sense that this death figure is like a shepherd in a way too, with this light, like out looking for the lost sheep, that you are not alone, nor are you abandoned. And so the fact that we have death in the reverse could deal with a denial of a really dramatic change that needs to happen. And I don't know about you, but I'm a person who will fight the change. There might be a big change coming, and I might not be ready to deal with it. And so I just kind of pretend I'm not seeing it, even though I'm a sensitive person, and you probably are too. and you've got feelings, you've got hunches, you know it's coming on the horizon, you feel it, and yet you're not quite ready to deal with it. It's okay because death comes anyway. You don't have to, it will come at the right time and the right harvest. It will come. This big change, whatever it is you're going through, whatever it is, this transition. And this transition may be more worrisome, troublesome, traumatic, and distressing, or it could even be very good news. I've also said that a lot on this channel too. Things which are very good news can still be tremendously traumatic. For example, if you think about having a child, mothers can have new children, and sometimes they suffer tremendous postpartum depression. They are exhausted and strung out. They may feel that they're not bonding with their child, or they're worried that they're not a good mother. Mothers and fathers can go through all those parental crises where they're just afraid of their ability to manage and to do well. And it can really, because all your schedules change, all your routines change, the whole focus of your life changes. And while it's beautiful news, it can be tremendously disruptive at the same time. It's a great problem, but it's also a very disruptive one. And sometimes we just focus on the good stuff, and then we go, oh, but it's not that difficult to change. It's a difficult change. It's a really difficult change. And I actually have, I have friends who are expecting any day now, really. I should actually have to text her and say, hey, how's it going? Because suddenly, because I'm thinking about a new baby and new parents, it makes me think, oh, am I getting a little heads up that I should contact her? Anyway, so this is the kind of thing. And I also know people who are experiencing anniversaries of close people's deaths, who've had losses recently. And I think it's very difficult to try to know, as a sensitive person, how do I maintain my balance so that I am not eaten alive by other people's dramas, these milestones on other people's paths, especially if it's not directly on your path? Like, how do you not adopt all the pain that somebody else is going through, who's going through distress? I think it's a tough question, because we all want to be giving and compassionate, and yet at the same time, if I adopt everybody else's sorrow for my own sorrow, then what am I doing? How am I progressing? How am I able to help them or serve other people or fulfill my own life's purpose? So if you have ideas about how to do that, or things that have worked for you, please put them in the comments, because I think that's a real challenge, especially for loving, caring, compassionate people, to feel for other human beings, especially in times of great distress and transition and disruption, and yet also to maintain the strength of their center, their poise, and their ability in loving detachment to be a help, and also to maintain allegiance to their own goals and their own purposes. So let's see what else we've got. Oh, there we go. Four of Pentacles in reverse. I'm also going to do an oracle card from the Oracle of Shadows and Light. Three of Swords. Oh, we're in the deep waters now. Okay. Oh, we are in the deep waters now. I hope that's okay with you. If it's not okay with you, probably you've already turned this off. So we're in it. Okay, so here is the Four of Pentacles, which often can be seen as a card of power and even a card of greed. It can be seen as a card, I see it as a card of responsibility, sometimes responsibility that's been thrust upon you that you don't necessarily want. Sometimes it's responsibility that you're grabbing onto too tightly. You know, you want to be the boss, that kind of thing. This Four of Pentacles actually does not have like a person alone, like a little miser alone. It has a crowd. and there's sort of like clockwork inside this character. So I am going to read, I know it's reversed, but I'm going to read what this is about because I don't remember. So, Four of Pentacles. Pentacles, Pentacles, Pentacles. It should be in here somewhere. My goodness, here it is. All right. Okay, the Four of Pentacles, Wandjina. Supernatural spirits of the Aborigines, Wandjina had the ability to transform into rocks and sometimes took residence in nearby waterholes. They were depicted as mouthless beings with large heads. It was thought that if they had mouths, flooding rains and other extreme weather would pour forth. They lived in mountains where sacred depictions of their appearance could be found on rocks. The spirits are there to imbibe gifts. They serve as a bridge between the waters of internal resources and the rain-filled skies of conscious delivery. Thank you. The divinatory meaning is remember to accept gifts in kind and never to allow greed to influence financial decisions. So I think the idea we're getting at here is that these are mouthless. Now, one thing I was talking with someone about, often the dead are portrayed as silent, voiceless, unable to speak. Just to put it briefly, that's not my universal experience. Sometimes maybe it's not speaking out loud, but the messages come through pretty clearly. So there definitely can be, in my experience, the dead have voices, they can speak. But this is sort of in a group, and these are supernatural spirits who are there to take gifts, and it's seen if they open their mouth, everything will gush out. So what I'm seeing here is a certain lack of flow, a lack of receptivity, quite honestly. And I've been talking a lot about spiritual gifts recently. That's been coming up in readings. And this, where they are mouthless, to me indicates sort of a lack of receptivity. You can't take in. And also, because they are mouthless, we're not hearing what's being said. The Four of Pentacles, to me, can also be a card that says, like, keep your powder dry, like maintain what you have. Try to nail down the things you have. Keep your reserves secure. But this is sort of saying here that there is a lack of flow, there's a lack of movement, there's a lack of gifts going out or coming in. And because it's in the Pentacles and these characters are in the stone, it makes me think the expression of physical resources, which can include your time, and also that you're receiving gifts. So I don't know how this will fit for you, but it seems possible that there have been physical gifts offered, which could be money, time, resources, and you're not receiving them. You're not taking them in. And because you're not taking in these gifts being offered, for whatever reason that might be, because I think of this card being tied to responsibility and power, it could be that you don't want to share responsibility. You think if someone gives you something, you're going to be beholden to them. And maybe that's the case. But in any case, I see sort of a lack of flow. It could be a case where you are not giving as freely of your resources to a certain project or goal as you might have. Like, because Four of Pentacles is sort of a status quo kind of card, like keep the status quo, lock down, don't change the power structure. Then this is saying you kind of need to upset the status quo. You're looking for a big change, and unless you accept a big change or make a big change, you can't have a big change happen, right? We all say that we want these huge moments of transformation and we want to be carried into new vistas. And yet, when we think to ourselves, well, what am I willing to do or change in a day to day way to see that happen? Often the answer is not much. I'm not really, okay, I can't change that because. I remember I had a friend a number of years ago, and there was a creative kind of project that she wanted to do. And she was quite good at it. She was very talented. But whenever she would approach other people who were working in the same vein, she would go, I don't know how you find time for it because I've got this, because. And these very well-intentioned people would say, well, have you tried this and have you tried that? Maybe you could rearrange your schedule this way, or maybe you could do this, or, they would make suggestions to her. And I had been at so many different occasions where she would go, oh, well, I can't do that because of this, and I can't do that because of that, and I can't do that because of that. If you have a no prepared for every suggestion that anybody might make or has made in the past, and you already have your no set up, like, no, I can't do that because, no, that won't work because, no, then you have to ask yourself, how much do you really want that transition? Because change requires strain. Even these wonderful changes that we want to make in life, nobody would say that pregnancy is easy on a woman's body. As wonderful as the changes that we hope that she will experience in motherhood, it's a very, very dramatic change. And it isn't easy. And this is true, not that everything is exactly like birth. That's not what I'm saying. But I am saying that everything that you want to do that you're not very good at now, or that you're striving for, requires that discomfort of changing something that you've gotten used to. You have to make more time in your day for practice. You have to save up to get some other piece of equipment that you need. You have to change some other practices in your life to support this new practice. You just find that you have to make those changes, and not all of them are going to feel all that joyful at the time you're making them. And that's why you always have to remember why you're doing it, that your goals are big, and your goals are not the status quo. Your goals are not just to hold on or to cling to what you have. Your goals are to keep growing through the major arcana, to keep moving. And I think here we have the Three of Swords upright. So this is a card here of unrequited love. You can see this ghost, and she has a sword through her heart, and one sort of in the back of her and one overhead. Let me read you about this sad character. Three of Swords. Here we go. Three of Swords. The Phantom Rickshaw, Mrs. Wessington's ghost. Jack Pansay had a brief romance with Mrs. Agnes Wessington, but as passions waned, he grew tired of her and fell in love with another. Despite the rejection, Mrs. Wessington continued to hound him until she died. Mrs. Wessington's ghost appeared to him from the seat of her rickshaw, still asserting that it was a hideous mistake. She was invisible to everyone but Jack, who had now fallen into fits of hysterics. His doctor was baffled, and his new love took flight due to Jack's perceived madness. He then lay on his deathbed, ravaged by loss and tortured by the thoughts of the ghost waiting for him. The image is drained of color, reflecting the moribund sentiments of the broken heart. The three swords are angled, suggesting tension and pain. The kerchief symbolizes broken promises. Look out for signs of trouble and prepare yourself for heartache and rejection. You may experience separation anxiety and a sense of isolation. Now, I don't know if you noticed, but I read that with a certain amount of glee. When I see cards like this, they don't send me running for the hills. There's a fantasy author, Terry Pratchett, and he used to write about a famous and powerful witch, Granny Weatherwax. And when Granny Weatherwax would walk through the forest, she was never afraid because she knew she was the scariest thing in the forest at that moment. There is a certain sense that when we look at this stuff, the purpose is to gain intelligence or gain perspective, to come up with opportunities and options for ourselves. Not to look at things like this and go, oh, look at these terrible cards. I will never be happy and good things will never happen to me. I don't I don't believe that. And I don't believe there is any card which is necessarily negative every time you see it. I don't read them that way. So when I see this Three of Swords, to me, it's very much connected to this. We've got this status quo, and it's saying don't stick to the status quo. Because if you stick to the status quo, you're going to end up with heartache. Because the problem is, Mrs. Wessington already lost her lover, and she let it kill her. She let the mourning and the brokenheartedness kill her, and then she was determined to kill him and take him down too. And then his new lover was brokenhearted because he lost his mind and went mad. I mean, these are the ripple effects, you might say, of holding on to something that's not working, something that needs to change, something that needs to go away. Whether or not it's an old relationship or an old habit or an old way of thinking, these things need to change, because if they don't change, if we don't get through the death, if we don't embrace it and let it happen and walk cheerfully with the Grim Reaper into our glorious new future, whatever that's going to be, then we end up like these sad, lonely, vengeful ghosts living out a drama that has long since passed. You know, the love is gone, the relationship is gone, even life is gone, and yet the sad cycle continues to play out. And I really think that that is what is being counseled here right from the beginning. These are sacred characters. There are gifts to give. There is protection to give. And what you have to do is to receive and not to fight the transition, especially if it's a big transition in life that has hard parts, difficult parts. The Three of Swords, you know, death is major arcana. Three of Swords is minor arcana. You can move through this. It can be temporary. The worst part is when you don't let the grieving be temporary, when you let it lock you up forever so that you can't make progress. And, you know, it's hard. I mean, healing is hard. Healing from bad situations is hard. And it also hurts. You know, healing hurts. You know, perversely, it does. So I'm not saying that I know that the things you're going through are simple. I'm assuming they're not simple. Otherwise, we wouldn't have a major arcana card staring at us. I think it's probably complicated stuff. But I think you have more assistance, more divine assistance and guidance, perhaps, than you've used up to this point. And I don't think that you need to feel like you're facing all this alone, that you're just this lone, scorned person who's, you know, got nothing left but, revenge and bad feelings, no no progress to be made. Um, I don't know. I feel like there's more. I just feel like there's so much more. And whatever the circumstances your life, it's going to take embracing things that might be a little uncomfortable because they're going to feel new and awkward at first. And I'm trying to rack my brain and think about the things in my life that fit that qualification too, because it seems important. So I'm flipping this Oracle of Shadows and Light card from, here we go, Oracles of Shadow and Light by Lucy Cavendish and Jasmine Beckett Griffith. It's a great oracle deck and great for this time of year as well. So here we have it. Hopefully you can see that whole thing. Who do we have? Oh my Lord. Okay, sorry to, but really, it's pretty great. I am Kali. From death comes rebirth. 13. Also 13. Here's the death card 13. Here's Kali. Kali is actually a great goddess to think about because she really is one of these goddesses who is very strong, who embodies the force of righteousness. She can act ferociously for the right cause, but she is also aware of love. She keeps in mind her love and those who she wants to protect. So she's incredibly powerful. She's incredibly dangerous. She is the most, she's the scariest thing in the forest. She's not scared of anything else, but she's also a very loving ally to have. So if you're thinking that you're afraid, that you're walking through a transition alone, and you want a helping hand, please reach out to a strong ancestral figure or a very strong good friend of yours, or even one of these deities. It could be Mother Mary. She's a great strong guiding hand. Kali, Freya, if you're interested in the Norse pantheon, Bast or Sekhmet. Like, there are so many different figures that embody this universal strength of from death coming rebirth, so that instead of being a sort of dried up widow who can't seem to cope and move forward, you become this transformative, beautiful, strong, and powerful figure who is part of making your own miracle and making your own future. I think it's gorgeous, and obviously there's a strong message at work here. I'm just looking in the foundation cards to see if there's anything else. Okay. Interesting. Okay, so here are the foundation cards just so you can have them. Here's the Eight of Cups. And you see we've got this horseman riding through the waves. So often we think of this as like leaving something behind, but the Eight of Cups is also, at least in my way of looking at it, it can also be a sort of warrior energy, because you have to leave behind consensus. You have to say, all of this settled and arranged way of thinking doesn't work for me. And oh, this is interesting. Oh my goodness. So this Eight of Cups, which was at the bottom of the deck, is called Der Schimmelreiter. Okay, so there is in the story a dike builder, like an earthworks to stop water, like a dam, named Hauk-Hayan. He built his masterwork, but he refused to follow a time-honored tradition of sacrificing a living creature by burying it alive in the dike. This resulted in great resentment among some superstitious villagers. During a severe storm flood, he received orders to watch certain points of weakness. As parts of the dike gave way, he watched in horror as his family was swept into the raging waters. He plunged into the rolling abyss on his horse. No remains were ever found, but his ghost and spectral horse appeared during storms to check the structural integrity. Spirits of the dead can be seen in the waves, drifters in the watery tomb. There is no stopping the continuous tide of destruction. Nature has the last say. The divinatory meaning you're treading water and need to move on, break away from entrapment and allow yourself to be free. So this seems to be saying that there is something that's been holding you back, sort of like the water is held back by the dike, but you're being asked to break free from that restriction and to move with the rest of the spiritual flow, so to speak. So that's interesting. And at the bottom of this one, which you might like, because it's the probably the cheeriest card that we have today, Candy Cane Angel. It's time for a treat. And she's very cute, even though she looks a little solemn. She has candy cane wings and candy cane here. And let me tell you if I can find a little bit about the Candy Cane Angel as a wrap up. It is time for a treat. I thought it was interesting because it's that time of year. And I don't remember ever pulling her in a reading before. Okay, the Candy Cane Angel is in charge of letting you know when it is time for some little luxuries to reconnect yourself with your self-love and self-worth. She too holds back from giving to herself because she's so earnest and industrious, but her message is clear. It's time for some fun. Give yourself the thing that you've been putting off until you worked hard enough or saved enough money or did without. Don't be in habitual denial. So this card does have a message to say about denial. It can be denial of treats and denial of sweet things, but I also think it's denial of what you know needs to change. And also to accept the feeling that you have strong spiritual support for the changes that you're making. And so if you make them, you do not walk alone. You do become empowered. And you don't have to replay these sort of worn out old tragedies that always put you, I mean, you look at this character, she's left out in the cold. I mean, she really is. She doesn't end up with anything except her bad feelings and her regrets. And that, of course, is not where we're trying to get to. But that's why we're not going to avoid this death, whatever this powerful transition is, by not avoiding it and by accepting the generosity that's given, and by not sticking to the status quo. We're going to get to milk and honey land, whatever that means for you. So until next time, oh, I know this is grim stuff sometimes, but you know, sometimes life is like that. And I find it's a little like blues. Like if you can look at the cards and think your way through them and the way that they apply to you, it's kind of less terrifying, or at least I find it so. So you can let me know what you think. And hope you have a great day and a fantastic week, and rock on with your bad selves.